All right, everyone, welcome to the Tonto's Demise week. What week is it? Week 6 recap. 6 weeks already. As you can see, appropriately sporting the Phillip Rivers jersey, not the cursed Phillip Rivers jersey, but the other one, the safe one. Let's see. First of all, going into this week, we were set up to have it be, at this point right now, it being an unprecedented week, season, I guess you could say, too, because we had one team that was 5-0, and we had two teams that were 0-5. And now, had to do a little bit of digging, but I can't guarantee that these numbers are accurate, these stats. But as far back as I can tell, if Yahoo is correct, and that's no guarantee, earlier than like 2008 or so. But let's see. Only once before that I could find did we have a team that was 5-0, and they went on to lose a couple of games in a row after that. And I could only find one other time that a team was 0-5, and that was, well, the 5-0 team, I should say, was Detling's mom, Jim Pyro, a few years ago. I forget it. It was probably 2007 or 8, somewhere in that ballpark. But and then the 0-5 team was Jim Crick in his very first season. I want to say that was 2010. He started the season 0-5. Much like Treesize this year, he started 5-0. And like I said, we had two teams that were 0-5. So no team had ever gone to either 6-0 or 0-6. So it could have been a big, unprecedented week this week. Fortunately, unfortunately, however you want to look at it, only one of those scenarios did play out, with Treesize moving to 6-0, which I believe we can safely say is the first time in Tonto's Demise history that we have had a 6-0 team. And unfortunately, we had, well, for me at least, and from Detling's point of view, we had the two 0-5 teams. One of them could have set the precedent for futility going into week 7. But unfortunately for me and Detling, but fortunately for them, they avoided going 0-6. They each won this week, moved up to one victory. So you avoided becoming legends in Tonto's Demise history. Unlike Treesize, he has moved up. So at least until next year, you guys avoid becoming, like I said, legends, whether you want to be or not. In the history of Tonto's Demise, you avoided that. So you're currently tied with Jim Crick for the worst beginning of season beginning futility. So, all right, congratulations to Tree for setting that record. He is 6-0, looking to keep that streak going. Seems like every year he gets a long streak of wins tacked together. The regular season seems to be no problem for Treesize. The Romo jersey is clearly in the right hands. I think that's safe to say. So enough of me rambling. You got to get the idea. Let's get right into it. Oh, let me check. I got some notes here written down. Let me check. Because I did this a couple weeks ago and I haven't gotten back to it. Anyone who's interested, overall this week, in week 6, we had 1,969.4 points scored. So the average score was 164. A lot of people were over that. A lot of people were way below. So not too many were right around that. It was pretty extreme disparities this week. So 1969. So that was the average weekly score. Looking at my point totals written down here, is right around 1900. So week 1 we had 1951. Week 2 we had 1839. Week 3 we had 2164. Let's see. I think last week we had 1816, a little bit low. So we jumped up this week to 1969. So yeah, right around 1900 at an average of 164. Yeah, week 1 the average was 162, then 153, then 180 in week 3, and 151 last week. So we're up a little bit to 164 this week for the average score, to anyone who's interested in those kind of numbers. Thanks to Brian, who got me to read Moneyball a couple weeks ago. So now I'm all thinking about those kind of averages and numbers and like what's the finding those kinds of things a little bit more interesting than I used to. So, but all right, let's jump right into it. 7 minutes into the video. The defending champion, FC Bohoric, went up against Chips my boy, who has been on fire the past few weeks after starting 0-2. Chips my boy squeaks this one out. The final score is 185.4 to 182.3. Now we got good scores all around these lineups. This one came down to Monday night because Jay had lots of Eagles in his lineup. He had Sam Bradford, he had Jordan Matthews. Well, those are the big two. And Justin, did he have anybody on Monday night? I don't think so. But, so Justin had a pretty comfortable lead going into Monday night, but when you got a quarterback that you're facing still yet to go, that's always going to be a problem, unless you're winning by, it's got to be at least, 75, 80 points. If you're going up against a quarterback and a receiver who are throwing and catching to each other, you're probably not comfortable unless you've got a pretty big lead. I think FC Bohoric's lead, must have been only about 40 or so, 45, because, Bradford and Matthews combined to score about 44. So your lead must have been right around 40. Not comfortable if you're going into that game against a quarterback and a receiver. You had Dwayne Harris, Giants receiver, hoping that either Beckham or Randall maybe wouldn't play or would get hurt, re-injure themselves during this game. Unfortunately for you, that didn't pan out. Let's see. As for Chips, my boy, said he got 44 points from Bradford and Matthews. He got 16 from Michael Floyd, the Arizona receiver, who went for 5 and 50 and a touchdown. Aiken got a touchdown for you. Adrian Peterson, 60 yards, not too much. Ivory, a big game from him. He had almost 150 yards rushing and a touchdown. Julius Thomas coming back. Finally getting you some points here. He had 7 for 78 and a touchdown. 21 points there. And once again, he's not stopping Devontae Freeman. I think I said this last week, and it still remains true. The guy just isn't stopping. He's killing the value of guys like Julio Jones and Tevin Coleman, and to some extent Matt Ryan, because he did have a receiving touchdown this week, but he's piling up the yards and the touchdowns taking everything away from those other guys. So the big stats that you're hoping for from Matt Ryan this year, the 60, 70-point games just aren't happening because they're getting all the touchdowns from Devontae Freeman. And you had Novak, couple PATs and a field goal from him. Green Bay defense did pretty good. Couple sacks and a turnover. But as you probably know, they gave up a huge amount of yards in this game. So they got you 12 on Yahoo. Might have been a little bit more than that. As for FC Bohoric, so you only lost by 3.1. Let's see, you got 53 from Breeze. Demarius Thomas, 10 for 111. You would have liked to see him maybe get a touchdown in there somewhere. Keenan Allen seems to be he shows up every other week, it seems like. This week he had 14 catches for 157 yards. So you got the bonus there for over 150 yards. But unfortunately, said two guys with between 24 catches between these guys. Unfortunately, none of them were for a touchdown. Harris only got you 3.8. CJ Anderson, most of his stats came from receiving, only 4 from him. But Garrett Blunt got you 2 touchdowns and 93 yards. Olsen went off in the second half of the game against Seattle, scored the game-winning touchdown. He got you 7 for 130 and that touchdown, 26 points there. CJ Spiller, another big disappointment week from him this year. Big disappointment career, we can say, for CJ Spiller. Always hoping that he's going to break out at some point, but it just never seems to happen. 6.7 from him. A couple field goals from your kicker, the usual from McManus. But then we get down to the real difference maker in this one. The Buffalo Bills defense. You kept them this year. They're one of the best defenses going into the season. You expected big things, good things from them. They were at home. I know they're going against the Bengals, but they're at home. Should be doing well. Unfortunately for FC Bohoric, the Buffalo Bills scored you 0. I believe Yahoo is correct. It was 0. There were no sacks, no turnovers. They lost, so you started at -3. Too many points, too many first downs, I think. I think you got 3 points for rushing yards, but passing yards was too much. So they got you, I'm pretty sure they got you back to 0. Or maybe it was 3, I'd have to look, but I'm pretty sure it was 0. Either way, that's killer when you get that from your defense, when you just needed a little bit, something, anything from them, a couple sacks or was one turnover, something, hold them to less points. Just really anything goes different. I feel like I probably say that all the time whenever we get these matchups where it's a difference of less than 5 points. Here we got 3, really, less than 3 points probably, because it seems to be happening surprisingly much lately. But when it's those 3-point differences or less, pretty much anything going differently changes the outcome of that game. Like I said, Buffalo, you get 1 turnover or something. Just this one goes the other way. Any yardage was different. CJ Spiller gets you maybe 1 more catch for some yards. One of your receivers gets you a touchdown out of the 26 catches that they made, but it just wasn't meant to be this week. And like I said, Chips my boy, riding the Devontae Freeman train. He is now, I believe he's won 4 games in a row after starting 0-2. So ever since the 4 weeks that Devontae Freeman has blown up, so has Chips, my boy, been riding the Devontae Freeman train. So as long as this keeps up, it's going to be difficult to keep up with Chips, my boy. So let me take a quick look here. Devontae Freeman, the last 4 weeks, starting in week 3, his fantasy totals have been 45, 38, 35, and 38 again. That's just ridiculous. I believe Matthew Berry said somewhere that this 4-week run that he's on is literally historic in terms of fantasy points. It's never been done. He's scoring multiple touchdowns, 100 yards every week. This 4-week stretch is going to be, as long as it continues, it is historic, legendary. Going to be talked about for years to come, I would think. So, Jay, enjoy this while you can. I don't know if it's going to last forever. As a Julio Jones owner, who was on fire the first 3 weeks, and ever since then he's done pretty much nothing. So, I'm hoping, as the rest of us are, there's 11 people in this league hoping that Devontae Freeman sprains his ankle, gets a high ankle sprain, or tears his ACL, or does something. Just get this to stop. No more. Come back next year. But yeah, so there's 11 people who are hoping for that, and one person praying that it does not happen. So we'll see how it goes. It's a long season, but you're riding him to a 4-game winning streak. And FC Bohoric, he drops, the defending champ, he drops to 1-5. He now in a 3-way tie with the previously defeated Detonators and Raritan Pups. So let's see. Speaking of the Raritan Pups, we'll get into this one. They were coming into this week looking to get their first win and not go 0-6, which would be pretty much toast in our league. And they got it, especially thanks to the miserable performance of the Springfield Isotopes this week. The Wolves got 180.6 to the Isotopes 121.9. The Wolves, you got Andrew Luck in a juicy matchup at home against New England. Really, that's one of the fantasy dream matchups that you get every couple times a season. New England jumped out to a big lead, so it was really just garbage time. A lot of that second half for Indianapolis. They got it to within a touchdown there at the end. 64 points for Andrew Luck. He went 6 for 69 and a touchdown to Moncrief for you. And that's really the only player who showed up for you other than Jimmy Graham. He got you 22. So there's 20, 20, and 64. So there's over 100 points right there, about 105, 110, just from those 3 players. Lynch did get you a touchdown, 50 yards. Baldwin, not much from him. Wallace, not much from him. Jeremy Hill, not many yards, but he did get you a touchdown. Heron, you had him in a running back. All his stats, though, were receiving. So he got you 0. So Jimmy Graham got you 22. Lynch got you 12. Your kicker got you 3 PATs. And let's see. Eagles defense really just, I don't know if they just really showed up on Monday night or if Eli Manning was just that bad for one night. I don't know how much the injuries to the Giants receivers affected this game, but so there were a bunch of turnovers, only 7 points. Good game for them. Yahoo says 24. I believe it was more like 35, something like that. 40, somewhere in that area. So you got 180. And as for the Isotopes, another fairly miserable performance from Peyton Manning, even basically only salvaged by his long touchdown to Emmanuel Sanders, 75 yards there, so that was a bonus. But that was his only touchdown. He had 3 interceptions, which really just hurts. James Jones, a couple catches, some yards, and a touchdown from him. The usual. Golden Tate, 16 points from him. He had a touchdown. Julio Jones, 6 for 93. Ryan Matthews got about 4 yards. Charkandrick West coming in for the injured Jamal Charles here this year. Looking for a little bit more from him. Maybe that'll happen in weeks to come, but here this week we had only 33 yards, and he lost a fumble, so less than 2 points from him this week. Got Richard Rodgers in, only 2 catches for 30 yards. Landry, got him in the flex. This game was pretty much a blowout from the beginning. Landry actually had a 20-yard touchdown run, and he only had 3 catches for 40 yards, so 15 points from him. 1 field goal, 1 PAT from the kicker, and Seattle defense had a lead in this one, but blew it near the end. I could talk about it a little bit because it was my team, so I was kind of watching the Seattle game, watching the box score at least on my phone as I was watching the boring, the Ravens San Francisco game that was on, which was completely uninteresting. Would much rather have been able to see this game, but Carolina basically ran all over Seattle in the first half and then came out and threw it all over them in the second half, including it seemed like they were driving down to get a game-tying field goal near the end, but Cam Newton went for the touchdown and got it to a ridiculously wide-open Greg Olsen. If you saw any of the highlights of that play, it's just ridiculous. The Carolina Panthers have one legitimate receiving game threat, and it's Greg Olsen. I mean, how do you not cover him in some of the most crucial plays of the game, points of the game? Just let him run right down the field. Seam routes is whatever I think they call it, but he just runs right down and catches a touchdown and wins the game. No one even bothers to cover him. It's like the Steelers in the first game against Gronk. You know that they're going to throw him the ball, and it's like you just let him run down the field uncovered. It's frustrating to watch as a fan, and pretty much all around as the owner of the Isotopes here. So the 121.9 was the lowest score of the week, which means the Isotopes are eliminated from the knockout pool this week. They dropped to 3-3 after starting 3-0 on a 3-game losing streak here. As for the Wolves, he avoids, like I said, setting the 0-6 precedent, and he moves to 1-5, but unfortunately, you are still in 12th place. The other team that was 1-5 was 0-5, I should say, was the Detonators, looking to go 1-5, and he was able to do it in pretty strong fashion. Detonators 211.65, the only 200-point score this week, crushing the Huber Squashers, squashing the Huber Squashers, I should say, who scored 147.55. We finally got the promised Detling benching his running back, although I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the original deal was benching both of your running backs, both of your running back spots, but playing a flex to be whatever you want. You could have benched Abdullah this week and it would not have mattered. It might have well, yeah, it wouldn't have mattered. You wouldn't have even lost the knockout pool. That's how bad it was this week for some people. But so let's see. Detonators, you traded for and Philip Rivers last week, and turns out you couldn't have done anything better to influence your team, as pretty much two guys carried your team to victory this week. Philip Rivers had 81.15. He had over 500 yards passing, 43 completions. So yeah, he outscored quarterbacks, a lot of quarterbacks around the league, just from his completions. Only 2 touchdowns though to show for it. The 81.15, I believe, is not the record. I believe it was Peyton Manning in the first game of 2012, I want to say. It was a home game, I think it was Baltimore. He had 7 touchdowns in that game. I looked it up real quick this afternoon and tallied it up. I believe I didn't check the box score. I don't know if he had a long touchdown in that game, but I wanted to say that the record was about 85. And just looking at it, Manning's total, I tallied it up real quick, and it came out to about 83 or so, I think. So it was right in that area. So I think Philip Rivers didn't quite set a record for our league this week, but he certainly came close. If he had gotten a touchdown on that last play of the game, he definitely would have set the single game record for one player. Let's see. So the 81 there, T.Y. Hilton got you 20 points. Wilson got you 7. Martavis Bryant comes back from his suspension and injury, I guess. Had an 88-yard touchdown near the end of that game, sealed the deal for the Steelers. So one of his 2 touchdowns, that's where most of his stats came from, though, that one. He got you 32.5. Alfred Morris got you 2. Allen from Baltimore got you 1. Delaney Walker got you 17, pretty good. Duke Johnson only got you 8.6 in the flex, hoping for a little bit more there. Hauschka, bunch of field goals from him. And the Steelers D, this matchup had defenses going against each other. I think we all fairly agreed, especially with Michael Vick going into this game, that the Arizona Cardinals had a pretty significant edge coming into this one, even though it was on the road here in Pittsburgh. But and it turned out to be, well, I don't think it was the deciding factor. I think Rivers was obviously the deciding factor here, but the Arizona Cardinals defense really didn't get much of anything. Yahoo says 4. I think it was right around that. Steelers defense, a couple turnovers, not many points allowed. They gave up a bunch of yards. Said only 13 points though, so pretty good. Yahoo says 16. I think it was closer to 25, something like that. So, as for the Huber Squashers, though, put in Andy Dalton, got you 46. Edelman, 17. Calvin Johnson, who you just traded for, got you 6 for 166 and a touchdown. 31 and a half from him. Let's see, Ruben Randall, the ever disappointing Ruben Randall, 5 catches for 44 yards, pretty much a typical day for him. Abdullah got you just about 5 points. It looked like this one could have been disappointing for you because you sat Ronnie Hillman at the request of Brian going into this week, and he ended up having over 100 yards. No touchdowns though, so that he had 111, so that could have been you missed out on 14.1 points there. But unfortunately, for you at least, this matchup was not even close to being influenced by that missing position. Bennett got you 12. Le'Veon Bell somehow Only had 88 yards, no catches, no touchdowns or anything, so 8.8 there. Probably one of the lowest point totals you'll ever see from him, unless he gets hurt in the first quarter. A couple field goals and a PAT from Crosby. And like I said, Arizona Cardinals defense gave up a ton of yards, ton of points, lost the game. So Yahoo says 4. It might have been 7, something in that area, but it was right. Excuse me, it might have been right around that 4 to 7. But there's nothing you can do when you go up against a quarterback who nearly sets the single game record for us, over 80 points. So it didn't really take too much, just decent games from all the rest of the Detonators players to bump you up over the 200 point barrier this week. So just like the Raritan Wolves, the Detonators failed to fall to 0-6 and be the first team to ever be 0-6. So you are 1-5. You're in 11th place still, though. As for the Huber Squashers, only your second defeat. You are 4-2, and you are still in 4th place. Let's see. Next, we had. We're talking about close matchups here before, so let's get into this one. The Rook versus Mighty Midgets. This one came down again to a Monday night matchup. And let's see, we had Odell Beckham. Let's see, was there anybody else? Midgets had the kicker, the Giants kicker. And let's see. Okay, he had DeMarco Murray too. So he had 2 players to your kicker. The Rook ended up taking this one down. The score is 169.25 to 166.75. Looking at the Rook here, he got 50 from Jay Cutler. Odell Beckham, 7 for 60 and a touchdown. 19 points there. Emmanuel Sanders, pretty much everything he got you came on that 75-yard touchdown. About 24 points there. Ted Ginn had 1 catch for 20 yards. McCoy got you 90 yards and a touchdown. Murray got you a little bit over 100 yards, so you got the bonus there, and you got a touchdown. Kelsey, 14 points from him. Kyle Rudolph, a typical Kyle Rudolph stat line, I guess. 2 catches, 9 yards, but he did catch a touchdown. So you got 9 points there. 3 PATs from your kicker. And your defense was New England going up against Indianapolis. No turnovers there, but pretty much what you were expecting. They gave up a lot of points, a lot of yards. Yahoo's ended up saying 9. I think it might have been a little bit more than that, but it was something right around there. As for the Mighty Midgets, looks like he only had his kicker going on Monday night, trying to keep him ahead, but he only got 1. Said Giants only scored 1 touchdown. If you get a field goal or something in this game, could have gone the other way for you, but you didn't. So only that 1 point from him makes a huge difference here. Like I said, the difference here was 2.5 points. So anything different happens, and this matchup goes the other way. But it goes how it goes. Matt Ryan, pretty much the same thing as Cutler, 51 points. Allen Robinson, pretty much the same as Beckham, 20 points. Let's see, Snead got you 9.5. Brandon Marshall continues to be just a consistent touchdown machine this year. 7 for over 100 yards again from him, and touchdown. He got you 22. Eddie Lacy, I've already mentioned him in previous reviews. I don't blame you for trading him away. He had 3 rushing yards this week. 3. In a game where you lost by 2 points. Your running back got the third overall pick of the draft. Got you 0.3. And let's see. You had this is named David Johnson from Arizona. He got you 9 yards. So 0.9. You got 1.2 from your 2 running backs. So you still lost, but you scored 166. So all I'm gonna say is Eddie Lacy and David Johnson, your two running backs, combined to score 1.2, and you still almost won. So how important is that running back position? It's debatable. I'm not going to get back into it. You traded for Gary Barnidge from Dubsy Hooligans, plugged him in. The guy had 3 catches, but 2 of them were touchdowns. 19 points there. Alshon Jeffrey, almost 150 yards on 8 catches and a touchdown. 29 points there. Let's see. And as you said, your matchup really came down to these decisions. Well, your kicker, who I think you only had 1 kicker, only got you the 1 point. But defense-wise, you went with Detroit at home against Chicago. Good matchup going into it, you would think. Should be turnovers aplenty with a game featuring Jay Cutler and Matthew Stafford. But this game ended up being a shootout, especially near the end. You only got 4 points. I can't remember if the total was that or if it was a little bit more. It might have been a little bit more. But way too many points, and there was yardage all over the place in this game. So even though you had the best matchup, seemingly was that Detroit defense at home against the Bears, but you would have been a lot better off with the Giants defense at Philadelphia. They got 4 dailies. They had 4 turnovers. They gave up too many points and they lost the game. But so the stats were, there wasn't a ton of yards. They might have gotten you a little bit more. They definitely would have gotten you more than Detroit, who only got you 1 turnover and 1 sack. So easy to look back and say, well, should have started the Giants defense. But I think we can all safely say that Detroit was, it was the clear choice going into this one with that matchup, said at home, not away, against Jay Cutler, who is a turnover machine. And you never know when Jay Cutler is just going to completely just shit the bed and put up a 15-point performance, which he's been known to do. But it wasn't meant to be this week. Little bit of controversy, but not really. I think in this one, we'll get into it here at the end. We still have, 2 more matchups. So, okay, but like I said, the Rook gets the win here. He moves up to 5-1, while Mighty Midgets, you've dropped down to 2-4, but you are still in 7th place, knocking on the door from a playoff spot still. So, string together a couple wins here down the line, and the way things are shaping up, you might be all right. All right, let's see. Okay, we've talked about this before. Was Possum Magic trying to set the precedent, going 6-0, and he was able to do it this week. The final score against the Twerkin Bowl Cuts was 151.4 to 137.55. Once again, I think I mentioned this last week, 151.4, let me see. You would have been defeated by, Possum Magic. You would have lost to Jimmy. You would have lost to Brian, Jeff, Gags, Jim, Jay, Justin, they all would have beaten you this week. But fortunately, you played one of the 1, 2, 3, 4. You played one of the 4 teams that you would have beaten. So once again, luck is on your side. Let's see. For you, you had Tannehill. Didn't actually have too many points until near the end. Got some padded his stats. He got you 39. AJ Green only 7. Macklin only 7. Bolden 15. Pretty good from him. Ingram only 46 rushing yards, but he did get 2 touchdowns there. Andrews, I don't even know what his first name is. I hope it's Andrews, but he got you 2 points. Antonio Gates, 18.5 from him in that huge game from, say, the 500-yard game from Philip Rivers. Lewis, who has been pretty consistent all year as a flex play. Surprisingly, he only got you 7 points here. Couple of field goals and PATs from your kicker. And Denver defense continues to roll along. I'll get into it. Let's see. They had a touchdown, 2 interceptions. Gave up a pretty decent amount of yards though. But Yahoo has 25. It was somewhere right around there, maybe a little bit more. But I'll get into that here with Torque and Bowl Cut score. Pretty much toe to toe. Your quarterbacks, 38.15 for Rodgers to 38.7 for Tannehill. You got better games from your receivers, though, as Fitzgerald had 17, Benjamin had 20, almost 21, Andre Johnson, 6.5, Frank Gore, let's see, he had 78, he got yards rushing for you. You plugged in Rawls, hoping that maybe something would go wrong with Marshawn Lynch, but it did not, so he only got you less than 1 point. Eifert, 13 points from him. Gio Bernard in your flex, been surprisingly consistent so far this year. 14.3 points from him. He's been right around 15 every week this year, so that's been pretty good. Pretty good value from wherever you drafted him this year. I don't know, can't remember where it was off the top of my head, but 6 points from your kicker and your Cleveland defense. So a bunch of turnovers and a touchdown against Peyton Manning. So I'd get back into this one. So this matchup also featured your defenses going against each other. Denver versus Cleveland. Said Yahoo said it says it's 21-25 in favor of Denver, which let's see, it was Yahoo's. The way Yahoo does their stats for defense is a little bit different than ours, so it's hard to keep it. I keep it as close as I can, but it's a little bit different. Yahoo said 21, but I think it was actually like 12. So you didn't lose many points from your receivers because Frank Gore only had 2 for 16, so you lost a little bit of points there, just a few. But as for Cleveland, Yahoo lists them as only giving up 14 to 20 points, but they gave up 26, which is 1 point too much in our league. So you got 0 there, and they lost the game, gave up a lot of yards too. So I don't know how many. I don't know that there were any sacks, but said the losing knocks off one of those. Basically, it eliminates one of those interceptions for you. So yeah, this matchup came down to the defenses. It was pretty much even, except for the disparity on the points that you lost that I had to cut from your overall total from your defense, only getting you, I want to say it was 12, but it was something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, that was the big difference here. Said no huge scores. You got Aaron Rodgers. You would have liked to see Here was only a 14-point difference, and only 38 from Aaron Rodgers. He gets closer to 50. Maybe this goes the other way. Let's see. I think it looks like Eifert and Bernard were the only people to score touchdowns for you. So, yeah, I mean, it was pretty even here, like I said. No huge performances. Your quarterbacks both under 40, and it came down to those defenses going up against each other. I mean, you kind of knew going in what to expect, and I think we got pretty much what was expected. You know, Denver pulled out a win, but Cleveland was able to actually kind of keep pace with them and make it difficult. The game went to overtime, so obviously they were able to keep pace with them, but it wasn't quite enough once again for the Twerkin Bullcats. Well, as I mentioned, Possum Magic, you moved to 6-0. Congratulations. I'd tip my cap if I had one. You are 6-0 for the first time in Tonto's Demise history. But we all know the regular season means nothing. No one cares where you finish in the regular season. It's all about finishing in the playoffs. And Twerkin Bullcats, you are 2-4. You are in 8th place. One more matchup was Vanilla going up against the Dubsy Hooligans, who, suffice to say, that could we say he shot himself in the foot again, not sticking with the guys you drafted. I should have gone through the first couple of weeks and looked at this to see what your actual record would be. If you had just stuck with Matthew Stafford every week this year, I think you would not be 2-4. You'd be more like 4-2. Don't quote me on that. I'm not certain, but yeah. And you benched what's his name, John Brown, but you played Cooks. I mean, and so I all right. I'm gonna stop. Vanilla, he won this one by 50 points, 184.1 to 130.95. Vanilla, you got 50 points from Tom Brady. Randall Cobb, you gotta wonder if he's still bothered by that shoulder injury that he had at the end of the regular season or end of the preseason. Other than that one, let's see, week 3, where he blew up and had 3 touchdowns, 35 points that week. The past 3 weeks from Randall Cobb has gotten 9 points, 5 points, and 5 points. So, surprisingly disappointing performance from him. But Vanilla, you're 5-1. You scored 184.1 with one of the better. But let's face it, this year you've got the number 1 receiver on one of the best teams in the league, and he only got you 5 points. Imagine if he had performed at the par and gotten you, say, 20 or 30, you'd be killing people every week. Speaking of killing people, DeAndre Hopkins He had 10 catches, almost 150 yards and 2 touchdowns this week. 37 points from him. Take a quick look at his game log because I know it's got to be something ridiculous. Yeah, he has, 32, 10, 24, 27, 31, and now 37. So these past 4 weeks, I guess you could say, too. Well, other than the second week 2, where he had 10, I mean, he's over 24 every single week. Pushing 30, if not over 30, these past couple weeks. Just ridiculous stats. I don't know if he can keep that up all year long, but so he was your keeper, one of your keepers, so no one else really had a chance at him this year. So good call on that, but he's enjoy it now because I don't want to say it's an unsustainable pace. He could prove me wrong, but like I said, in the same way with Devontae Freeman, these guys, it's just they can't keep doing that. Defenses are going to adjust. Guys are going to get hurt. Game flow is going to change. It just isn't it never happens in the league. I mean, he's yeah, he could keep it going for a couple more weeks or just be hit or miss rest of the season. But for somebody to keep, putting up 30 points every single week is just unheard of. So enjoy him while he's hot. Hopefully for you, when he gets cold, then Randall Cobb will get hot and balance it out for you. Decker got you 14. He had a touchdown. Carlos Hyde hasn't really done much at all since his big week 1. 5 points from him. Chris Johnson, 4 points from him. Larry Donnell, 6. Forte, 20 points from him. He had a touchdown, 60 yards, 3 receptions. Robbie Gould, a bunch of field goals and a couple PATs. And Jets defense did pretty good. A couple turnovers, some sacks, decent yardage allowed going against Washington. More than enough to get you the win here against the Dubsy Hooligans, who started Marcus Mariota, who got you 26 points. Not what you're looking for from the quarterback, obviously. Alan Hearns, 11. Hankerson, 7.7. Cooks, 8. Forsett, most of his points came from receiving, so we had to cut those off. He got you 6. Lamar Miller, 100 yards and a touchdown. Good game from him. Gronk, 3 for 50 and a touchdown, so 14 there. Arian Foster, you put him in the flex and sat Woodhead. Kept rolling with Forsett, Miller, and Arian Foster. Probably your best lineup combination, I would think. Barring injuries or bye weeks, that's probably going to be your set for the rest of the season. I don't see why you would adjust it. Let's see. I mean, they're more consistent players in terms of snaps, overall snaps in a game than Danny Woodhead, obviously. Much more consistent. Gostowski, a couple field goals, a couple PATs, typical game from him. And this one, Atlanta's defense, you picked them up and plugged them in away at New Orleans. A very dangerous decision. Even though, New Orleans has been kind of in a tailspin so far this year, Atlanta has been pretty good. It's a divisional game on the road. It was Thursday night, just not the most ideal matchup, I think, for an away team. But you picked up Atlanta, and they did manage to get you 1 point. I think Yahoo was accurate. So this one, had, like I said, had a 53, 54 point difference. And like I said, Mariota scored you 26. While you benched Matthew Stafford, you continue to not believe in him. Matthew Stafford got 69 points. So nearly, 26 to 69, 33 point difference there. You tack that on to your 130, there you're up to 160, 164. You stick with John Brown. He had 10 catches and 100 and almost 200 yards. He had 31 points, almost. So you plug him in over, say Hankerson, who got 7. So there's another 23 point difference. So you tack on that, and I think you win this one. Just barely, but a win's a win. If you stuck with the guys you drafted to be your starting lineup. But you didn't do it, and it cost you the game. Easy to say now. I realize there's so much I could say. I could talk for another 10 minutes about the Dubsy Hooligans' decision making here, but if history has taught me anything, it's that the more you try to tinker with your lineup, that's just, you're asking for bad shit to happen to you. Unless you get players, later rounds who you drafted to be like bench guys, unless they really make it obvious that they should be in your starting lineup, like are consistent, like just come out of nowhere, like Barnett, like somebody like Barnage, who's been proving that he should be started every week. I think you know Cooks and Brown and somebody else. I think were in your starting lineup. Like I think let's see, Devontae Adams. You drafted him, but obviously he's been hurt. But Cooks and Brown. I think you drafted those guys early enough. And I think I said before too, we expected them to kind of be PPR machines this year. But you never know. I mean, they've been underperforming so far this year, but you never know when they're just going to go off, have these big games like John Brown did. Like I said, the more you try to tinker with it, the more problems you create, and the more frustrating it gets. I mean, even just look at my team. I can say, got to kind of. I know I've had a lot of injuries affect my team, whether it was to my players or it was to other, to like somebody like Roethlisberger, who has made Antonio Brown. He's made him nearly worthless. So there are things like that, but you got to kind of just stick with those guys, even though you know that because you just never know. But guys like Cooks and John Brown, they haven't been affected by quarterback injuries or quarterback defense, the injuries to them or injuries to their quarterbacks, things like that. So you kind of you drafted them to be your starters, and at some point you just kind of have to accept that if they underperform, that's just how it is, and that's how it's going to be. You drafted them to be your guys, and maybe it just wasn't meant to be this year, but that's how I've come to feel about it. You draft your guys, you draft your starting lineup. I think even Bean has said before, he gets through the first 10 rounds and he's got his starting lineup or what he anticipates to be his starting lineup. So really that's my point, I guess, is the more you tinker, the more you just create, you just snowball problems on top of each other. And that's just experience. That's been my experience. And it seems like that's happening to you here. If you had played Matthew Stafford every single week this year, you would be, your record might be at least one game better, if not two. You're 2-4. I'd have to look at it and figure out the totals, but just those lineup changes and not going on. Was it week 1 you switched out Woodhead at the last minute, which said you didn't have Arian Foster then, but I mean that cost you the game. Just overthinking it and tinkering, it creates problems. But that's my 2 cents about it. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk here. So those are the matchups, all for week 6. Finally, let's just get into it here a little bit. We had some problems coming up with the Mighty Midgets and Rooks matchup, which was said by 2.5 points. One of the things that was mentioned is that the Rook got 3 points for his defense when they blocked a extra point attempt. We've been counting that all season long. We've been counting those, I think, forever. It's just been, you can check with Jimmy and see what he says, but I think he'll just agree. And I realize that you're pissed about it because it might cost you the game, but it was simply an oversight in the language of our rules that extra point was never put in as counting, as one of the blocked kicks that could be given points to for your defense, special teams. But as far as I know, we have been counting them all along. It's just that until this season, which is probably, we probably should have addressed this, but it's extra points. No one really thinks about that until, this year they changed it around. So no one ever really considered a blocked extra point to be a problem, because when did that ever happen before this year? Said almost never, but we've always counted it as a blocked kick, and this isn't. I believe Gags pointed out that this wasn't the first blocked kick of the season, blocked PAT of the season. So, we've been counting them. I realized that this one being counted changes the outcome of the game, but that's just the way it goes. Now, as for the question comes, I think, more with the PATs, but also the 2-point conversions, because teams are going for that more now. And actually, if you look into the league scores and settings, they now list 2 points for defense getting a PAT return, I think it says. So, there's been 2-point conversions going on forever, but for a long time, but we're getting more now than we used to. But we've never counted a fumble or a interception thrown on a 2-point attempt. Those don't count. They will never count as interceptions or fumble recoveries for your defense, because the ball is dead at that point. But they have changed it, obviously, to where I think a PAT and a 2-point conversion attempt can both be returned for touchdowns, but those only get 2 points. So if a quarterback, say, throws an interception on a 2-point attempt and it gets run back for a touchdown, I believe that is 2 points for the team. So I'm pretty sure that even though it hasn't happened yet, it eventually is going to happen. So Yahoo will be giving, I'm pretty sure it's going to be 2 points for that. So, we're going to have to add that, I think, just to our general rule book, because it's going to happen eventually. And when it does, we got to make sure that the team that it happens gets the 2 points that they're credited for. So it's not a touchdown, it's only 2 points either way. So we'll discuss this more. I think it's fairly straightforward, but said all blocked kicks count for 3. I think the argument was that we didn't include PAT in the league, in the rule book language. It's definitely added there now, and it will be. I think we just all said it's extra points. It just went overlooked, and we all kind of assumed that it's any kick is going to be counted that gets blocked is going to be counted as a blocked kick. So I believe that's going to be how it goes. And like I said, 2-point conversions can now be returned. I think extra points can be returned too. So those points we can maybe discuss next year if we want to make that more points than just 2, because how often is a 2-point conversion going to get returned for a touchdown? I can't remember it ever actually happening. So we could make it more points than 2 if it actually does happen. But we'll discuss that. We'll see as time goes on. It's still the first year with these new rules, so we're kind of feeling it out. But we will score it fairly. We'll do everything, by the books, to make sure everything's fair for everybody. And we don't want to create any problems. We want to keep things smooth and make sure everybody's happy. But that's just something we're gonna have to deal with. you know, those blocked PATs, it's a kick. We will change the language. I already adjusted it in on my computer here where I had in the Tonto's Demise playbook. It's already been adjusted. Here we've got team defense gets plus 3 points for a blocked field goal, punt, PAT. So it's all in here. So hopefully this doesn't come up again. Just we understand that any kick that gets blocked will be 3 points for you, and we'll see what happens when someone finally returns one of those for a touchdown. Said it's eventually going to happen. They'll get the 2 points, and like I said, maybe we'll discuss next year if we up that a little bit more because of just how much like safeties. We made safeties 5 points because they don't happen very often. So those kind of special circumstances we should give a little bit more points to because, well, like I said, they don't happen very often. So we should give extra credit to some of those very rare events. So, all right, well over an hour here already. So just kind of needed to address those couple things at the beginning and here at the end. So we got some pretty good matchups here in week 7. Important ones for a lot of important ones because we got teams a lot of the teams who are at the top are playing each other. A lot of the top 7 teams are going up against each other, so it's going to be an important week. Important for let's see, FC Bohoric because he doesn't want to drop to because the other two 1 and 5 teams play each other, so he doesn't want to drop down to potentially down to the bottom. So good matchups. We'll let the podcasters take over in doing the preview. So that's pretty much enough for me for 1 week. So all right, everyone, we avoided a lot of any significant injuries this past week, and hopefully it stays the same this week and for the rest of the season. Not just for me, but for the rest of you, in the spirit of competition. I'm already up to an hour and 8 minutes here. I didn't even get to talk about the trades that happened. So much going on. I'm sure in the podcast they'll review the trades this week. I could talk about those for another 10 minutes, but I don't think you want to hear it. We'll let those guys do it. So all right, everyone. Here, week 7, we're halfway through the season, and good luck to each and every one of you, and we'll see you here next week. All right, bye-bye.